Finding a buried treasure may seem like something only found in a fairy tale pirate movie. However, if you know where to look, hidden treasures are still out there just waiting to be found. Gearheads worldwide have heard of people discovering long-lost cars hidden in barns and storage units, and all dream of one day coming across one themselves. But when that mystical opportunity arises, there's simply something magical about opening up a storage unit to find a dusty car cover with a gleam of Rosa Corsa peeking out from underneath. And that is exactly what we did with this 1987 Ferrari 328 GTS. Left alone in a dark storage unit for many years, I was not sure exactly what to expect when the bay door rolled up, and I could not be happier with the stunning and well-preserved 328 that greeted me, just waiting to be taken back out on the road and driven once again. Having grown up in this business, this is not the first barn find Ferrari that I've come across, but I can promise you that finding these cars never gets old. And one of the most amazing things about this car is we pulled it out of the storage unit, brought it back here, put a little oil down the cylinders to make sure that when we tried to turn it over, you know, it lubricates everything. And we charged the battery, got in it, turned the key, and it started up with no problem. It just sprung to life like it had just been waiting to be driven again. So it is so well preserved, and I've found barn finds in all kinds of conditions. Whether it was the Daytona Spider, the real Daytona Spider in a million pieces that had been sitting in a storage unit for 30 years, or fully ready to go cars like this one that just need a service and they're good to go. It's always amazing what you can find hidden around. Thanks to Magnum PI, the 308s and 328s have been worldwide recognized as a Ferrari. Nobody will question what this car is when they see it driving down the road. And the 308s and 328s have become even more desirable because they're the last of the analog Ferraris. Basically, in today's day and age, everything is so technology-based and computerized that having a car like this where the ECU in this car is pretty bulletproof. I mean, it's as bulletproof as it gets for a Ferrari, and you don't have all those electronic gremlins to worry about like you do with modern cars. So they have become very collectible because they're great drivers, they're very reliable for a Ferrari, they're easier on maintenance, and they're just overall stunning, beautiful cars. And the 328s are the last evolution of the 308 series. So the 308, like I've gone over the names of these cars before, it's 3 liters, 8 cylinders. The 328 was improved to a 3.2 liter 8 cylinder. And all these cars are, all the 328s are quattro valves. So they have about 260 horsepower and I think about 213 foot-pound of torque. So they're really fun cars to drive. When we pull a car out of a storage unit, we never know what exactly we're gonna find. And sometimes, like with this car, we're surprisingly pleased because when we pulled the car cover off, it may be dusty, but under the dust you can tell the paint's nice. The interior on this is really nice. The leather on the dash and the center console's good. I mean, overall, this is definitely a great find. I love uncovering cars like this in storage units. It's always just so much fun to find these kind of hidden gems. As I mentioned before, 328s are relatively low maintenance cars, and while they do have the dreaded cam belts, they can do the cam belt service in the car without having to remove the engine, which really lowers the cost of the service. Plus, a lot of people actually will service these themselves. Now, if you want to send it to a mechanic, that's totally fine, and they're fairly simple to work on cars, so any qualified mechanic can do a service on this. But because they are such popular cars, there's no lack of information and resources on places like Ferrari Chat, where if you want to do some little tinkering yourself, it's really not hard, and there's lots of people more than willing to help you out and give you information or tips online. So that's one of the reasons that they've become so popular. In proper sports car form, of course, all these cars came as a manual, and it really does surprise me that Ferrari has transitioned to all paddle shift cars. There is just something about the clinking through a gated shift of a Ferrari that is just irreplaceable. I mean, it's legendary. When you're driving and you hear that clink, clink as you go through the gears, there's just really no feeling quite like it. And so I just love older cars like this because of that, and many other reasons, but there's something about that sound that just makes you feel good while driving the car. And this car does have a chrome shifter knob, which is not original, and the steering wheel is not original, but it does have the originals that are being sent to us that I'm going to put on the car. So when this car is sold, it will have the factory original steering wheel and shifter knob, just to make everything nice and factory in this car. And when I dug this out of the storage unit, it was actually very well covered up, so it had the big car cover on it, but on the interior it had seat covers, and he had put microfiber towels all over everything to keep the dust off, and it was kept in a dry environment. So when I cleaned up the car and took all the seat covers and everything out, this car is in really great shape. It has 57,000 miles on the odometer, but honestly, from looking at it, you really wouldn't guess that it has over 50,000 miles because the seat bolsters are nice, and it was just a very well taken care of car. It really is incredible that this car runs and drives so well after sitting for so long. Like, literally all we did was charge the battery and get it like the oil in the cylinders and start it. That's all we've done to this thing. The windows roll up, the lights work, it shifts great. 308s and 328s and Dinos can sometimes have like a touchy second gear synchro. None of those issues in this car. I mean, this is really just, this car is so surprisingly nice, especially after sitting so long. So I'm very happy with this find. I am in love with this car. This 328 is a 1987, and in 1988 and a half and 1989, they changed a few things. So it has ABS and slightly updated suspension. However, visually, there's a few differences where you can look at it and tell kind of what year range the car is. One of the usual telltales is the little Cavallino Rampante on the side mirror, but people add them on aftermarket. So those were on the 88 and 89 version. They weren't actually on the 87. Now they look really cool and I do like them on there, but these are usually on later cars. Same with the badge right here. Well, not quite the same, but the badge on the side was never actually on the car from factory, and a lot of people added them on because, I mean, who doesn't like Ferrari badging? Now, this badge is a really nice one. It's metal. I've seen kind of the puffy sticker ones that aren't as great, but the metal ones are really nice. We will probably remove the badge just because it's not original to the car. And the nice thing is they're actually pretty easy to remove. You heat it up with like a hair dryer a little bit to kind of loosen the adhesive. You take some floss, just kind of floss behind it, and it comes right off, and it doesn't disrupt the paint or anything like that. So they're a nice add-on if you like them, and then if you don't want them on, it's not a big deal to take off. Also, so the big visual you can tell that is never really changed on these cars is the wheels. So in the older models, they had convex wheels, and on the ABS cars, they had concave wheels. No, other way around. Concave wheels on the earlier ones and convex on the later ones. So this, you can look at the wheel and see that it's concave, and you can tell that it is pre-88.5 because it doesn't have the wheels that allow for that updated suspension. So that's a big visual tell. Now, another really cool thing on these cars is, as you see, it has sleek, pretty body lines and they're undisrupted. So Ferrari didn't want to put a gas cap just sticking out of the side, so they hid them right back here. And it's actually on the driver's side. But something I find really funny is they actually put a lock on this side as well. And behind it is a little window, just like on the 308s, but on the 308s, it's not covered up with the vents or the louvers. But on this side, where there would be the gas cap, is just nothing. So they added a little lock here. Why? I don't know. It's Ferrari. They could, so they did. The car does feel very like intuitive, you know? I mean, that's the lovely thing about older cars is you are so connected to it. And the 328s are nice because you don't have to really, you know, they're not too finicky. They're more, you know, willing to please you, willing to do what you want. Whereas some of the older ones can be a little bit more touchy, but it's still like you kind of form this bond and vibe with the car and understand, you know, what it wants from you and what you want from it. And it's magic. Once you get it down, it's just magic. Plus that sound is magic too. The 308 and 328 interiors are very similar, but they did provide some upgrades on the 328. So on the center console, you'll immediately notice that it no longer has those toggle switches, and instead it's a more modernized and updated kind of center console. It looks a lot more streamlined. But one of my favorite improvements they did is they moved the e-brake from the center console over to the right side of the driver so that it's no longer in the way. There's been a couple times where I would put the e-brake down in the cars and kind of wrap my fingers or my knuckles on the toggle switches a little bit. So it's definitely nicer having the e-brake over on the driver's side instead of the middle there. And then, of course, Ferraris always have their quirks. And sometimes, like with the gas door, they don't really make sense, but sometimes they do make sense. So a fun one is the key. On a couple models, they have these keys and they're bendy, which is fun, but there is a reason for it. So Ferraris are not exactly known to be great for really tall people. And one of the ways they try to help out their clients is with the key, you put it in, turn the car on, and then if you need to, you can push it out of the way a little bit so that your knee doesn't rub up against it. So, I mean, it doesn't make a huge difference, but they were thinking of their clients, and it's the thought that counts, right? The engine right behind you, it never grows old. No matter how many times I drive these cars, how many different ones I drive, that sound is something that will never be old to me. Oh, and here's what I meant about the key earlier. You can kind of like flop it out of the way. Now I'm short, so I have zero issue, but if you need to, you can scooch it just in case, which is always nice. It's funny when you think about it that in today's day and age of super high-powered cars, 800, 1,000 horsepower, a car like this does not seem that fast, but honestly, it's not just about going fast, and realistically, who's going to be able to use 800 or 1,000 horsepower on a normal road? It's you know, a little unrealistic. But a car like this is so much more engaging, in my opinion. There's the feedback from the steering wheel because you don't have the power steering, and the gated shifter, and just sitting in the driver's seat with that feeling at the wheel and the shifter and the 3 pedals. There's really nothing quite like it. And even though modern cars might blow you off the line, you feel like you're going a lot faster than you are, and they're just so much more fulfilling to drive. I mean, the 308 and the 328 have long been considered one of the most reliable Ferraris and one of the simplest, but definitely also one of a crowd favorite for a long time. I mean, they're just really fun cars. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. And if you did, please subscribe, like, and stay tuned because we got a lot more coming very soon.